I do want to talk about this visit. We've been paying close attention, obviously, to Rikers Island, Controller, as you know, right? The surprise visit comes from the heels of you releasing this correction dashboard last week, right, which tracks what's actually happening inside Rikers. With that in mind, how does what you saw yesterday compare to some of the data on the dashboard?
So for many years, the Department of Corrections kept the data locked up and didn't show us what was happening. We started pushing beginning of the year. And as you say, there are some better trends there. So the absentee rate, employees out sick, had spiked as high as 28%. Now it's back at 12%. That is still double to where it was pre-pandemic and double the other uniformed forces, sanitation, FDNY, NYPD. As a result, the most corrections officers who are there are working double shifts, and there's still staffing challenges, but they are a lot better than we saw a year ago. So more people are getting to medical appointments, more people are getting to their court appointments, and there are fewer of the real disastrous things like an overwhelmed intake center with people sleeping on the floor in showers that we saw when we visited a year ago.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's progress. Public advocate Jamani Williams had a lot of positive things to say yesterday. But, it does appear that Commissioner Luis Molina is getting a handle on the situation. But are gangs and staffing still an issue?
Well, yes. Slashings and stabbings were up in July, though assaults on guards were down. So there's, still a lot to do here. We do have to get a handle on that staffing problem for sure.
Yep.
And there are an array of other issues as well, though we saw much better conditions in the majority of what's called punitive segregation.
Yeah.
Still did see a number of people in solitary confinement in violation of state law. So some things are getting better and some things have a long way to go.
Yeah, well, things are getting better. It's tough to ignore the fact that we're talking double-digit numbers of deaths on Rikers just this year alone, over 12. Now, you have said many times you want to speed up the closure of Rikers Island, as have others, right? But Mayor Adams says that you're a bit idealistic when it comes to this because there's no place to put the number of incarcerated. Take a listen to what he had to say, and I want to get your reaction.
Someone has to think through a plan that I believe was put in place and we did not think through. The numbers are higher than what the borough-based jails would hold. Right now, the numbers are higher.
He went on, that was from a previous press conference. He said it again yesterday. So what is your response to that? And are you in favor of sending some of the incarcerated to upstate facilities to burden the borough-based jails once it happens?
No, let's remember these are folks awaiting trial. Now, the most harrowing thing I had yesterday was I talked to a man who's been awaiting trial for 8 years, most of that time in the infirmary. He's no threat to anyone. He maintains his innocence, and yet he's been waiting mostly in the infirmary in bars for 8 years. The whole idea of reducing the population at Rikers is because the vast majority of people, we saw over 300 women there, the vast majority of whom do not need to be awaiting trial in jail. So we can get to that number.
So what do you say to the mayor?
Well, look, I think the mayor had said he agreed to the plan to close Rikers Island by building 3,300 beds in new jails and then closing Rikers. Unfortunately, since he's been mayor, the population in the jails has gone up, including decisions the mayor makes directly, like city sentence folks. So, I had heard the mayor say he was committed to the plan to close Rikers. I'm very committed to that plan to close Rikers. And we need to pull together and get it done. Unfortunately, the population is now up at about 5,700. It was down as low as 3,800, and we've seen that reducing crime can go along with reducing pretrial detention, and that's our challenge.
Now, the mayor also was critical of Councilwoman Carlina Rivera's plan to introduce a bill banning solitary confinement. But what's an alternative for that?
The good news here is that they actually have a very good alternative. They have adopted a relatively new plan, sometimes called RMAS, not very helpful initials, in which people get at least 7 and in some cases 10 hours out of their cell with a lot of supervision so that they can keep the jail safe for guards as well as detainees. And it's working. There are over 100 people in something like that new form. And yet we saw a handful of people in dark, small, isolated cells 22 or 23 hours a day. The United Nations calls that torture for a good reason. I support Carlina's bill to end it.
Yeah, we've spoken to the correction officers just to throw their side in, and they are saying without punitive segregation, they don't have an ability to discipline inmates here.
But punitive segregation includes that new model that gives people 7 to 10 hours a day in the day room. There are models that will work to keep the jails safe, to keep guards safe, to keep detainees safe, that do not require what the UN rightly calls torture.
Yeah, before we let you go, because we're running out of time here, you'll be joining the mayor later today to make a gun safety announcement. Can you tell us exactly what that's about?
That's right. So one thing that the mayor and I and Jumani and I think everyone agree on is that gun violence remains a severe crisis, a real public health issue. We have to do everything we can to get guns off the streets of our city. We're going to be calling on the credit card companies to create what's called a merchant category code to track purchases at gun stores. It's crazy that doesn't exist now. The credit cards track purchases at grocery stores, at nail salons, but they don't have a category for gun stores. As a result, it's harder for law enforcement to see suspicious activity. This will solve that problem. The mayor and I are both trustees of the pension funds, and we'll be standing together to call for it.